don't know what I'm doing!
Hey, I'm back. What's up? Hello, YouTube. My name is Jeremy. I don't know what I'm doing, and welcome back to another episode of The Curious Case of. And today, before I start, let's go back. Let's go back in time a little bit to about a week and a half ago. So on March 9th, 2018, a game was played between the Houston Rockets and the Toronto Raptors in Toronto. Now, this game wasn't historical or anything, but it was important for two reasons. Number one, the Rockets, who were on top of the league at that point, were riding a 17-game win streak. And number two, the Toronto Raptors, despite only being third place in the league, were first place in the East and became the first team that season to clinch a playoff berth. Now, again, this is nothing historic, but this was the first time that had ever happened in Raptors history. And now, it wasn't that long ago when people thought that basketball in Canada wouldn't work out at all. How do I know this? Well, there didn't just used to be one NBA team. If you've ever wondered why the Memphis Grizzlies are called the Grizzlies despite there being a notable lack of Grizzlies in Tennessee, they didn't always used to be based in Memphis. Some news that might come as a shock to a lot of people was that from 1995 to 2001, there was an NBA team in Vancouver.
Whoa, what?
Why don't more people talk about this team? Well, this team is bizarre. They never won any championships, they never won any titles, they never even made the playoffs. Heck, they never even had a winning season. None of their players made the All-Star game. In fact, none of their players are even still in the league today. There's really no reason to come across this team. Now, in the 1980s, the idea of an NBA team for Vancouver was tossed around, but never really went anywhere. But in 1993, when the NBA was talking about expansion again and Toronto was in the running, Vancouver decided, why not us? Around this time, the Vancouver Canucks were building a 20,000-seat arena right in the heart of downtown, so it didn't seem like too much of a stretch to move a basketball team in there as well. So in February of 1993, that's exactly what they did. And they announced that they had plans to move an expansion team into the new arena for the 1995-1996 season. After Toronto's bid was confirmed in September of 1993, a few months later in February, the NBA gave approval to the Vancouver bid.
The NBA Board of Governors has voted unanimously to grant the NBA's 29th franchise to the city of Vancouver. And to the group headed by Arthur Griffiths.
Early on, they were planned to be called the Vancouver Mounties, but the actual Mounties weren't too happy about this, so they had to go back and try again.
Not appropriate. Why? You're relating law enforcement to a sport. Is it very basketball? No. What's basketball about a Mountie?
Adored Winning Spirits merchandise warehouse opens and ends all speculation about the name of the NBA's newest franchise. The Vancouver Grizzlies will growl onto the court next year, but team merchandise roars into retail right now.
Now, during these early years when the franchise was still being formed, the Grizzlies, and the Canucks for that matter, were actually sold to a brand new conglomerate called Orca Bay Sports and Entertainment. After the 1995 expansion draft with the Toronto Raptors, unfortunately the NBA had installed a few, let's just say, difficult rules for both expansion teams. Neither team was allowed top 5 draft picks, even if they won the lottery. The draft rules weren't made any easier as years went on, as no matter what, both teams were not allowed to have top pick in the NBA draft, even if they won the lottery within the next 3 years after. Things would start off fairly well for the Grizzlies, as they would end up winning their first 2 games that they ever played. However, things went downhill pretty quickly, as immediately after, they lost 19 straight games, close to an NBA record. The same year, they lost 23 straight games. Now that one was an NBA record, so give them props for that, they made history. Now that record has since been passed, but that shows you how bad things were early on. They only had a winning percentage of about 19.6%. But despite that, they were drawing in relatively average crowds, 14th in the NBA at around 17,000 spectators a game. Now this leads me to the 1996 NBA entry draft. Anybody who knows anything about the NBA knows that this draft class was absolutely stacked. You had players like Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, and the Grizzlies walked away with Sharif Abdul-Rahim. Now, admittedly, this guy is a great NBA player, but when you pick him over players like Ray Allen and Kobe Bryant and, again, Steve Nash, you kind of scratch your head a little bit. The Grizzlies didn't improve at all, and would only win 14 games that year, finishing near the basement of the league. In their third season, the Vancouver Grizzlies accomplished something that they'd never accomplished before. they stayed out of the basement of their division. They finished 6th instead of 7th.
This is not okay.
Now, the fact that this is an accomplishment shows you just how bad the team was. It was around this time that people started to notice that attendance was taking a hit, and they realized that they needed a big franchise player. And they had one. It didn't work out too well.
He's been mentioned all week as a potential number 1. And what a night this promises to be for Steve Francis.
Steve Francis was on the doorstep of a dream. Only one thing could ruin it.
I'm like, man, Jeff, I do not want to play in Vancouver. He's like, Steve, I understand. So, I'm repeatedly telling him this because we knew they had the number 2 pick.
Don't draft Steve. He does not want to play here.
With the 2nd pick in the 1999 NBA draft, the Vancouver Grizzlies select...
So I'm down like this.
Steve Francis from the University of Maryland.
My grandma told me, don't poke my lip out. Go up there.
The Maryland guard looked like he might trip over his bottom lip on the way to the podium.
So I'm up there shaking the commissioner's hand, and he says to me, don't worry about it. There'll be better days. You'll have a great career.
Unfortunately for the Grizzlies, the expression on Francis's face spoke volumes.
I'm not gonna lie. It hurts. It hurts to see your city be described as an obstacle for a star player. And it hurts even more to see that player say outright, I will not play there. I don't like that city. So what followed was the Grizzlies had to trade him. And they had to trade him somewhere that he'd be happy with.
We spoke with a number of general managers. Houston was a city and a team that had the right components of issues with the cap.
It was, at that time, the largest trade that had ever been done in the NBA. Yeah, I think it was 13 players involved, which was, it takes a lot of time just to trade one player for another today, and it took forever to do this one.
All of a sudden, I hear Houston. And I'm like, this is unbelievable. I was jumping up and down forever, man, and they told me I got traded to Houston, man. I was so excited.
And looking at what we got in return for Steve Francis, we really didn't get much at all. And in my opinion, that was the final nail in the coffin. Now, unsurprisingly, Vancouver was pretty ticked off about this. So every time Steve Francis would play in Vancouver, he'd get booed. And pretty loudly.
In Vancouver, a very hostile crowd awaiting Steve Francis here this evening.
I know people outside the arena could hear it. It just rang out.
In his first game in Vancouver, as a member of the Rockets, he absolutely lit up the court. I mean, he was playing against the Grizzlies. Of course the Rockets won. And that year, he would go on to tie for Rookie of the Year. Now, prior to this draft, we needed this pick. Because the season had been shortened due to a lockout, meaning that we only played 50 games. You know how many games we won that year? 8. And let's just say after that, attendance absolutely cratered.
The fans got the short end of the stick because we weren't winning any games. So, I probably wouldn't have came and watched us either.
Now, prior to their final season, Orca Bay Sports and Entertainment realized they were losing far too much money on this franchise and decided to sell it to a man named Michael Hazley. By the time April of 2001 rolled around, it was already well known that the team was going to move to Memphis. So by the time they played their final game in Vancouver, things started to get a little bit weird. There's really not any footage whatsoever that I can find of the final game in Vancouver, but from what I've heard, it was a really bizarre atmosphere. More like a funeral than a basketball game. And there was a famous sign that was held up saying, "Thank you for the worst team ever." I can't say I blame Vancouver for being upset, really. Also, can you guess what the final team to play in Vancouver against the Grizzlies was? Yeah, it was the Rockets. And they won. That wasn't the final game in Vancouver Grizzlies history ever. Their final game was actually a road game in Golden State. And they actually won it. Now, the move wasn't absolutely official yet. The move did become official on July 4th of that year. Because nothing says ripping something out of the heart of Canada and making it American like the 4th of July.
Oh my dude, you just got pranked. Bet you didn't see that one coming, huh?
That hurt. That hurt a little bit. But it was about to hurt even more. Because Memphis got something that Vancouver never got. Their first season in Memphis, they got Rookie of the Year. In 2001, they got Paul Gasol, who ended up being traded for Mike Bibby and a few other players. But he would go on to be Rookie of the Year. If the Grizzlies had stayed just one more year, I'm almost certain they would have stayed for... How long has it been since they left? Basically, there's no other way to say this. Vancouver got absolutely screwed. And to make matters even worse, Memphis doesn't even draw that big a crowd. They're routinely near the bottom of the NBA attendance charts, whether the team is good or bad. So why don't more people talk about putting a team back in Vancouver as much as they do Seattle or any other city? It's because no one wants to remember them. This is a team we're talking about in 6 seasons that had 2 owners, 2 managers, and 5 coaches, no playoff appearances, no all-stars, and yet this city wants another team. The Raptors themselves play preseason games here every now and then, and they almost always sell out. Why aren't we given at least a shot? Because let's be fair, we never really were. When the Sonics left, that might have been it for Vancouver. Because now, if there's going to be a team moved back into the Pacific Northwest, it's going to be Seattle. I don't mean to end this video on a bit of a hopeless note, but really, as much as Vancouver deserves a team, I don't think we're ever going to get one again. It'd be great if we did. I mean, the city's certainly ready. The fans are going to be ready to line up for season tickets no matter what. I don't care if the team's terrible. They've already seen terrible. Why would they be not used to that? It really is bizarre to see a team that is such a ghost. Let's be honest. This is a team that nobody wanted to play for, that nobody wanted to watch, that nobody wanted to own, and that nobody wants to remember.
Grizzlies was a good name for Vancouver's basketball team. It was just spelled wrong. It was Grizzly as in causing horror or disgust. In 6 years, the Grizzlies' win percentage was .216. If you watched the game back then, you had a 1 in 5 chance of seeing Vancouver win.
I think I'm going to end it there. Because to be quite honest, with a team like this, there's no easy place to end it. But if you like this video, like it. And if you want to see more, subscribe to it. And if you got any ideas for what I should do next, please let me know in the comments down below. Or if you got any comments on the Grizzlies at all, let me know in the comments down there too. Honestly, I'll read them. I will. I got no life. But as always, my name is Jeremy, I don't know what I'm doing, and I will leave you with this.
When you guys see the support that you guys get when you come out here for training camp, does it surprise you that there's little talk about a franchise coming back to Vancouver?
Yeah, it definitely is, because it's amazing, the basketball atmosphere. You know, the times we played preseason games here, it felt like, you know, the atmosphere was crazy, you know, and I had a camp here in Vancouver this past summer, and, you know, I didn't think it'd be as big as it was.